Hello, F1 fans. Welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're joined by myself and Hari, but Vasco unfortunately was not able to join us. So before we begin our episode about the United States Grand Prix, let's introduce Kaloyan. He is also a part of the AUBG Daily team. So let's hear him introduce himself and tell us a bit about himself.
Well, hello guys. My name is Kaloyan. I am, as David said, part of the AUBG Daily Club. And I am a huge F1 enthusiast, a large part thanks to this podcast and these guys. My favorite, I'm going to do the same as they did in their first episode, and I'm going to say my favorite driver of all time, my current favorite driver, my favorite truck, and my favorite team as well. So my favorite team is Ferrari. My current favorite driver is Charles Leclerc. My all-time favorite driver is Kimi Raikkonen, and my favorite track is Spa.
I love hearing that we have more Ferrari propaganda on this podcast. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Kawa, as Vasco is not here. And let's begin with the US Grand Prix and specifically practice. And in practice, we only had one practice session as it was a sprint weekend. But Ferrari were really good. They had a 1-2 in practice and in a way foreshadowed their pace on Sunday. And also we had a lot of spins in practice, and this we can attribute this to the new surface that was done at Austin for this year. And we also saw more spins during the course of the weekend, which we'll get onto. But yeah, that was pretty much practice, nothing crazy. Yeah. And yeah, we can move on to sprint qualifying.
Well, for sprint qualifying, the first shocker was Oscar Piastri out in SQ1. Nobody expected that. I mean, McLaren's pace has been quite good in recent races. Also, Mercedes actually showed some promising pace, and I was like quite impressed as George Russell almost got sprint pole position. He was 13 thousandths behind Max Verstappen, and both Haas were in SQ3, which was quite impressive from the American team.
Franco Colapinto as well made it. And also, I would say, surprisingly, at least in my eyes, that Max Verstappen snatched pole position. I personally didn't expect it considering the last few races from Red Bull.
Yeah.
Moving on to the sprint race. And let's start with Kalata.
So, to be honest, I honestly can't get excited for a sprint race. It is a bit of an unnecessary format in my opinion, but this one, I have to say, proved to be quite entertaining. We witnessed some very interesting switch of positions between the Ferraris, which as I kind of see as pointless because I feel like they were concentrating on each other and they failed to chase Russell because Russell was just in front of them. Also, it is very important to note that this was Max's first win since Spain in any Formula One format, which I think was quite a pleasant surprise for Red Bull fans because they have been struggling to find hope for their championship. But Max once again showed a very good performance. I think the Red Bull showed a surprisingly good pace. They were good. I think that we're going to get into the qualifying as well, but they showed hope that they were going to be good in the race as well. And I dare say that they were after the, I don't know if how we call that kind of break, but after the break, they showed a better form than McLaren, in my opinion, which is a bit of a bold statement, but I think,
It's difficult to really compare the two, considering, especially in the sprint, it was really Max and Lando at the front and Oscar and Perez were at the back. So it was kind of hard to really see which car was truly better. Although I will say at the sprint race, it did look like Verstappen had it under control. And really, Lando fell susceptible to Carlos Sainz, who drove a brilliant sprint race, by the way.
Yes.
Incredible overtakes. But the sprint race, at the end of the day, it's worth minimal points, so it's not really too big of a deal, in my opinion, for example, that the Ferraris were battling. But we can move on to the qualifying for the Grand Prix. Hari, what do you want to say?
Well, unfortunately, I'll start off with Lewis Hamilton, who was out-qualified by Valtteri Bottas somehow.
We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, I mean, even though he made a mistake in turn 12, it doesn't have to affect his lap so much that he ends up in P19. I don't get it. How did he manage to post such a bad time?
Yeah, it was actually Lewis Hamilton's first Q. He hasn't qualified this low since Brazil 2017 when he crashed in not FP1, in Q1. I don't know if you remember this, but this was 7 years ago. So it was very shocking. But Lewis Hamilton, we'll get into it later, but his weekend was absolutely miserable. We had Williams disappointing. I mean, I was really disappointed to see Franco Colapinto. He got knocked out in Q1, which was really unfortunate. And in terms of Q3, and the fight for pole was actually looking very interesting. We had Lando Norris provisionally taking pole position. I don't think anyone expected, because Max Verstappen looked like he was flying out there. And on his last lap, he looked amazing. But George Russell found the barriers at turn 19, I think. Is it turn 19?
Yeah,
the
it
second
is,
to
it
last.
is turn 19, yeah.
The second to last corner. And that basically ended qualifying. We had Lando Norris on pole position with Max Verstappen right alongside him, and the two Ferraris right behind, which poised for an interesting grid for the race, for sure.
Yeah, it did.
Anything to add about Q3?
It was, what was very interesting for me? I actually didn't expect this, but I think we forgot to mention this in the sprint qualifying as well. But not sprint qualifying, but the sprint itself. The Haas's actually showed very, very good pace.
Double points.
And specifically Kevin Magnussen. Mm-hmm. Kevin Magnussen actually managed to out-qualify Nico Hülkenberg for the first time this season. I'm not sure about this, but I think this was the first time that Magnussen actually out-qualified Nico.
I don't think it's the first time, but for sure Hülkenberg has been dominating, and it is good to see that K-Mag managed to step up for this race, for Haas's home race as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's enough for qualifying. We can now move on to Sunday and the Grand Prix. Starting off with the podium, first place Charles Leclerc, second place Carlos Sainz, third place Max Verstappen, and the only DNF throughout the race was Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, Ferrari won too, but let's start off with pretty much where it all went right for Ferrari, and that was the race start.
It was a beautiful race start. It was one word, masterclass. It was Charles Leclerc managed to seize the opportunity at the first corner beautifully. He managed to pass 3 cars and maintain the lead for almost the entire race. He was the only times where he didn't manage to maintain it was during his pit stop. But then he managed to undercut all of the other racers in front of him. So he behind him. So it was a very good strategy from Ferrari. I can't believe I'm saying this, but a masterclass strategy from Ferrari. It was beautiful.
I agree. I mean, it was overall great race for Ferrari fans. I'm the only non-Ferrari fan here, and for me it was completely the opposite. But yeah.
About the start, what do you guys think of the Verstappen-Norris, incident? We could say there were no penalties at turn 1, but do you think it was right or correct the way the FIA handled that incident? I mean, FIA had a lot of incidents to handle this race, but specifically for that one, they gave no penalty. And yeah, what do you guys think about that?
I'm not sure. I think it was probably a racing incident.
I would also agree with that. I mean, we have seen... At this point, I think it was genuinely very accepted, especially when we have such a large turn as the first turn. Max has been known to be doing everything in his power to keep a place, as we will see later when we discuss it later, that kind of controversial decision by the FIA. But I think at this point it was not surprising that Verstappen took that kind of action. I think he was going to overtake Lando, and he did overtake Lando. But it actually gave an amazing opportunity for Leclerc. It was such, I can't stop talking about this. I think I have seen the race start for this race so many times since the race began. It is just the pinnacle of a good start. Hamilton managed to gain so many positions, but again, we'll get to that later. Hamilton managed to do a brilliant flying start. Lando actually did a very good start, didn't he?
Yeah, he got a good launch. I think he just gave Max just enough space so that Max can send it down the inside. And we know Max, he's always going to send it. But I feel like Max, especially this race, he was just focused specifically on beating Lando.
Yeah.
And I think especially at the end of the race it showed. And he managed to do so. So, yeah. But speaking of Lewis Hamilton, as we just mentioned, he had a great start, actually. He got up to P12 after, the poor qualifying. But just a few laps in, everything just fell apart out of nowhere. I guess maybe, Harry, do you want to share something about it?
I was shocked when I saw it turn 19 once again. I don't know why it's probably cursed this weekend for Mercedes. I don't know. Just the back end of the car just disappeared, and Hamilton was in the gravel. He was not in the wall like Russell, but he was beached in the gravel and couldn't get it out. So that was the end of the race for him, unfortunately. And by the way, this was the first safety car since Canada, which is absolutely insane.
It is insane.
And it was actually not an impactful safety car because the restart was pretty, uninteresting. Leclerc just kept his P1. There were no battles, and I expected more, honestly.
Yeah, back to the Hamilton crash. It was very similar to the Russell crash, and actually Mercedes brought upgrades to this race, and Russell crashed in qualifying, and then he had to revert back to the old spec. Whereas Hamilton was still with the upgrades, and he also lost the car. So maybe the upgrades just weren't working as they hoped for, clearly. Maybe that was a factor.
I think that specifically when we're talking about Russell, I think that what Mercedes did, I think they gave him back the floor that he was using for Canada, but I'm not sure. I think Lewis or Toto, I saw an interview explaining about this, that they gave him the old floor.
It was, yeah.
And I genuinely think that it actually did Russell a great favor, because Russell did a remarkable comeback drive. He started after the safety car restart. He started from P19 and managed to climb up all the way to P6, which are solid points.
Yeah, I think he maximized his result, honestly. And also the hard tire strategy to start on the hards was the way to go. He managed to extend and be in clean air for a long time, so that really helped as well. In terms of further down the order, we had some interesting battles, and specifically Fernando Alonso starting the most random beef with Liam Lawson after the sprint race.
Yeah.
Yes, after the sprint race. And then as a statement, he dive bombed Liam Lawson into turn 1 at qualifying, which I found kind of petty from him, but that is Fernando Alonso. But in the race, Liam Lawson, he absolutely silenced Fernando Alonso, overtook him brilliantly, and went on to score points. But overall, what did you guys think of their battles over the weekend?
It was unexpected, but it was fun to watch.
It was genuinely a beef that we didn't know we wanted, but we definitely needed. I love it when big F1 teams such as AlphaTauri and Force India are racing each other. It's amazing.
Yeah, for context, Fernando Alonso said that, what is this AlphaTauri doing? He's an idiot, on the team radio. But also, just to point out, during the race, Zhou Guanyu and Yuki Tsunoda had the most random turn 1 spins. Neither of them were under any pressure, and they kind of just lost the car. And Yeah, these were, I mean, pretty minor incidents since both of them were running outside the points. So Joe Guanyu was running in P13 when that happened, which was
highest in the season.
Yeah, it was unexpected for a Sauber to be up that high, and he just kind of threw it all away. And yeah, same for Yuki Tsunoda, he kind of ended his points hopes. But apart from that, yeah, those are really the main things in the midfield. We can move on to the end of the race, and more specifically the battle between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen for that final podium place, and pretty much could be deciding for the championship at this rate.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the incident, and more specifically Lando Norris's penalty. Was it justified? Was it not? How did you guys see it?
I think it was unfair actually, because both Max and Lando were off the track with all four wheels. And this means that like Lando should not get a penalty because he was pushed off by Max, who was also off the track. So it doesn't make sense to me. I was quite appalled by that decision, honestly.
And Lando had already more or less passed Max. I think that Max was trying to find a way how to maintain his position, and he tried to push away Lando, and he managed to do that in the most unfair and unjustified way possible. And I think that many people are drawing comparison between the two key penalties during the race. I am specifically citing, I think, Russell and Bottas. When Russell received the 5 seconds penalty,
5 seconds.
5 seconds penalty during the race for basically the same reason, for pushing Valtteri Bottas off the track, and I think that Max should have received the penalty in this case, because it genuinely was like this, and Max has been known to be playing dirty on occasion. To be honest, the thing that I honestly hated, and one of the reasons why I genuinely hate McLaren as a team, is that they completely butchered this entire incident, because they knew that all of them were at risk for a penalty, because Lando went off track, and they knew that Red Bull will try to argue against it, and they're going to be demanding they were going to be demanding a penalty to be given to Lando. And I think that what they should have done is to allow Lando to give the position back to Verstappen, so that Lando may have another chance to fight with Max for this position.
I see your point, but there were like 3 laps to go. It's so risky to just give up the place when first you don't know for certain if he's gonna get a penalty. And in my opinion, I agree that I don't think it was a penalty if Max Verstappen is going off the track, who is on the inside. I don't know how the other car is not forced off the track.
Yeah.
So there's always that, and because I heard that a lot of people think that Max Verstappen just knows the rule book, but Max Verstappen is basically just dive bombing the corner without even trying to make it, just so that he can stay ahead. And if the other car goes off the track, then there's a problem for the other car, which in my opinion makes no sense. The rules should be more clear, and also the stewards in general are very inconsistent, because for example, George Russell got a penalty, but George Russell didn't go off the track.
Yeah.
So how did that work? So that's pretty, it's FIA things at the end of the day.
I wanted to ask you, gentlemen, a question. Do you think that this was the defining moment between the so-called Norris-Verstappen rivalry? Is this going to be the end that we see? Has Max Verstappen officially put the last nail in the coffin of a McLaren drivers' championship?
I actually think yes, because the points gap right now is 57 points, which is a lot considering there are only 6 races left. Five races left. So I don't see how it's going to happen for Lando, unfortunately, and I think that was like the last, as you said, nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that Lando, to win the championship, first of all, he needs a Max DNF, because Max has been so consistent. He will finish every race in the top 5. So Lando would need to win every race to gain serious points. I mean, with 5 races left and 57 points behind, he needs to gain over 10 points per race.
Yeah.
Over 11 points per race on Max, this is a lot. Yes, there are sprint races, but you're gonna gain minor
There
points.
is one
in
more
sprint
sprint
races.
race, I think.
There's 2.
Two?
Yeah,
Where
yes.
is the second one?
Brazil and Qatar.
Oh, there is a sprint. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that, title fight is over. I think Max Verstappen's just consistency and really the amount of races he wanted to be in a season. Because you have to remember, Max Verstappen has 7 wins. Lando Norris has 3.
Yeah.
Like, that is so difficult to make up. And I think we're seeing it now. I feel like people are being too unrealistic that Lando should have this championship in the bag when Max Verstappen has been incredibly consistent.
I agree.
But in terms of the constructors, though, McLaren, they're in first, 40 points ahead of Red Bull, and Ferrari are only 8 points behind Red Bull now. We have 3 teams within 48 points of each other. Actually, first to third in the constructors is less than first to second in the drivers' championship. The constructors' battle has been extremely close this year, and Ferrari, based on this race in Austin, seem to be the quickest, or are consistently, like, it's been a few races now, and I know in Singapore they didn't finish on the podium, but that was because of qualifying. They had a bad qualifying. Otherwise, I think they would have finished on the podium there as well. But do you guys think Ferrari are in the mix here for the constructors' title? Or if so, if not, why not?
Well, I would like to, before I answer this, I would like to point out a few things. Ferrari have been really consistent ever since the end of the summer break. They had a podium finish in Zandvoort. They had a beautiful 1-3 in Monza.
1-4 in Monza.
Wasn't it 1-3?
No.
Oh, no, I'm
Both
sorry.
McLarens were on
Oh
the
yeah,
podium.
my bad, I'm sorry. But then they had, they were going to get a 2-3 in Baku if the accident with Checo hadn't happened.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc also got pole position.
Yeah, that is true. So the Ferraris have been showing a very good pace, and I think that they have actually been outranking Red Bull currently with the way that their car behaves. They have shown in the races before, however, that they have the tendency to be unreliable on occasion, but so do Red Bull and McLaren. I am honestly optimistic. I don't want to say it in a definite way. But I think that the chances for Ferrari being second is great, probably the most likely scenario. But I think that with 5 races remaining, if they maintain the same pace, the same behavior, the same everything, I think that they have a good chance for a championship.
Yeah, it would be Ferrari's first since 2008 if that were to happen. But if McLaren win it, it'll actually be their first constructors title since 1998, which is 26 years. Khadi, your thoughts on the constructors battle?
Yeah, I think that Red Bull are like the team that is right now least likely to win it, especially considering Checo Perez like being a bad performer this year. So I think that Ferrari actually have a shout, but it also depends on McLaren's like last few races.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, as far as I'm aware, Max Verstappen has the chance to become the first drivers' champion to be driving for the team that finished outside of the top 2 in the constructors, which would be crazy, but it really goes to show the difference in the 2 drivers. Also, to mention further down the order, Haas overtook RB in the constructors for 6th place. Thoughts on that battle, and how do you think it'll progress? Do you think Haas will be able to keep 6th place?
Yeah. I think like based on recent performances, they probably will be. But actually, RB have Liam Lawson who's in form, so it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I also agree with the fact it's going to be very interesting. Keep in mind that Lawson managed to do a great thing during his first race as an official Formula 1 driver. Yuki has shown that he is good but I think that RB have a good chance of regaining that position just because Haas have proven to be quite unreliable when it comes to race. I mean, they could have a double pointer like they had in Austria and then completely butcher everything and have both drivers out of the out of top 10. Though I have to say, Nico Hülkenberg has been very reliable when it comes to finishing in the points.
Yeah, in terms of the battle, I think Haas will finish ahead as they actually have scored points in each of the last 4 races, whilst this was RB's first points finish since the summer break, actually. They hadn't scored points since the summer break, so it was important to get on the board at least, and they got it with Liam Lawson, which I think was surprising considering he started at the back of the grid. But yeah, enough with the championship battle. Now we're going to move on to our fun rubrics, and we're going to start off with our highlights of the weekend. Harry?
Well, my personal highlight is George Russell's comeback because it was really nice to watch. Even though, on the other side, it was horrible for Lewis Hamilton. At least George Russell was like something to cheer about in our garage. So, yeah, what is yours?
Yeah, my highlight of the weekend is Ferrari. And even though I would say Charles Leclerc winning, obviously incredible, but I want to say Ferrari as a whole because they showed great pace, and not only Leclerc, but Carlos Sainz was absolutely incredible as well over this weekend. Great in the sprint race, great in the actual race. And at one point was even closing down Leclerc, but I think in the end he just gave up because there was no really point to try to fight his teammate. But yeah, I think it was a perfect weekend for Ferrari.
A perfect weekend for Ferrari it was. My personal highlight is again Leclerc's win. I honestly didn't expect Leclerc to have one more win, especially that dominant of a performance. I am not going to stop mentioning the masterclass that he did with this race. Ferrari did an amazing strategy. They were dominant this weekend, mind you. In the practice session, they were 1-2 again. It was like 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull. Basically, how the podium turned out at the end.
Yeah.
But of course, it was Sainz was the leading Ferrari. To be honest, I kind of expected more from Sainz. But to be fair, he was not placed in such a lucky position as he was because the fight between Verstappen and Norris was happening just in front of him, and he didn't really have a lot to where to move. Well, Leclerc had a pretty clear way in front of him, and it was for me, my highlight was definitely Leclerc's win. It was beautiful, it was dominant, it was everything that one Ferrari fan would hope it would be.
Now let's move on to our surprise and disappointments. I can start this time. My surprise was Liam Lawson. And now, even though on this podcast I am always like Liam Lawson, I love Liam Lawson, but he started at the back of the grid and he finished P9. And I expected him to be good and to be better than Tsunoda, but to beat him starting at the back of the grid, not only beat him, finishing the points, incredible. And this is, as I mentioned, RB's first points finish since Belgium, which was before the summer break. And while Yuki Tsunoda had a spin and finished in a miserable P14, Liam Lawson, honestly, get this guy in a Red Bull seat. I love this guy. My disappointment of the weekend is Alex Albon. And now I want to bring up something because has Alex Albon been a fraud this whole time? Because Alex Albon, so obviously he was in the Red Bull team, got demolished by Verstappen, and got subsequently dropped. He moved to Williams after a year away from the sport, but he moved to Williams, and his teammates were Nicholas Latifi and Logan Sargent. And yes, Alex Albon beat them every time and occasionally was scoring points. And we were thinking, oh my God, Alex Albon is dragging this Williams up to places unheard of. Or was it actually that his teammates were so bad that he looked like he was an incredible driver? And now, ever since Franco Colapinto has come back, or not has come back, but has started, Franco Colapinto's looked arguably better, or at least on pace with him. And Franco Colapinto, no one even thought this guy would even be driving the car like 2 months ago. So I think that Alex Albon, he needs to seriously start performing, because you cannot be losing to a rookie, not just a rookie, but a guy that is 4 races into his F1 career when you're... It was actually his 100th race this weekend. So,
was it?
Yeah, it was. So Alex Albon, you need to pick up the slack. But yeah, that was my surprising disappointment. Kari?
Yeah, especially considering he's going to have Carlos Sainz as a teammate. He has to be better, honestly. My surprise is Haas, because Haas achieved double points in the sprint. They also got points in the race. It was an impressive weekend for Haas, and it's just amazing to see, because they're a small team and they're performing well again. And my disappointment obviously is going to be Lewis Hamilton. No surprises there, because the way he ended the race was just horrible to watch, honestly. I hope he has better weekends like until the end of the season, but honestly, I don't think he's motivated enough to drive for Mercedes anymore, so I don't expect anything big from him.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you, gentlemen. Alex Albon is really a curious subject in Formula One. But coming to my surprises, I'm basically basing my surprise more of a surprise for the weekend rather than the race. I think that the Ferrari 1-2 is really my surprise, because Ferrari were riding pretty low since Singapore. So basically, Leclerc was trying to overtake Russell for the entirety of the last 5 or 6 laps, and it was very difficult for him. Plus the way that he was acting with Piastri in Baku basically showed me that maybe the Ferraris were lacking a bit. But I am very pleasantly surprised by the way the Ferrari were doing. And speaking of Piastri, my biggest disappointment for the weekend is Piastri. I honestly expected more from him. Given the fact that Harry and David know what I have said this on many occasions, I feel that Piastri is a better driver than Lando. I honestly like him more. I think he's a better driver. And to see him get knocked out of in Q1 in the sprint qualifying, and then throughout the race, he was just there. There was literally nothing happening with Oscar Piastri. So I would say that my biggest disappointment in the race weekend was Piastri, because I expected really a lot more from him.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri, to go off what you said, was pretty much nowhere the entire race. And I'm just looking at his race results. And actually, this is his first time outside of the top 4 since Spain, which is actually when Max Verstappen last won a race. It just goes to show how long ago that was. So yeah, disappointing race from Oscar Piastri, but still some decent points from McLaren. Now we can move on to our reactions to our predictions, and also our predictions for Mexico, which is in a few days' time. So let's start off with Harry.
Right. So actually, we can also say what Vasco's predictions for this race were.
Let's go first through Vasco's predictions. He said that Piastri will win both the sprint and the race, and this couldn't be further from the truth. Sorry, Vasco. Unfortunately, you're not here for me to make fun of you. And your other prediction was 1 Ferrari outside of the points, so that is 0 points for Vasco. But some of us actually got some predictions right, Harry.
Yeah, I did get the prediction that Liam Lawson would get points, even though he was not announced back then, which was nice. I like that one.
Incredible prediction, actually.
Incredible indeed.
Yeah, and the other one was not really nice. Lando Norris to win both the sprint and the race. This did not age well, but it happens. And my predictions for Mexico actually are double Williams points. Let's see. I mean, Franco Colapinto is in form. The same cannot be said about Alex Albon, but we'll see. It may happen. And the other one is really bold. A Mercedes podium.
Oh, that is really bold. I agree. In terms of my predictions, I was actually 2 for 2 on my Austin predictions. So my first prediction was Ferrari will score the most points. They got a 1-2, obviously. Incredible race from them. We've already mentioned it. And also, Franco Colapinto points. And this was actually looking like it was not going to happen for most of the race, but towards the end, on the fresh tires, because he did the hard to medium strategy like George Russell, and that gave him a lot of pace, and he found himself in the top 10, grabbed the point for Williams, so good job for him as well. He drove another great race, as I feel like he has since he's joined F1. And yeah, my predictions for Mexico, my first one is actually to do with the home hero, Sergio Perez, and that he will finish in the top 5.
Ooh.
And even though this may not sound bold, he has not done this since Miami, which was round 6. And this Mexico will be round 20.
Oh my God,
so,
that is true.
Just take that into consideration. And my second prediction is Alpine points. I think Alpine are actually good around high downforce tracks. Mexico is such because of the altitude. So I expect them to be pretty decent. They were actually pretty good in Austin. We didn't really talk much about Alpine, but Pierre Gasly was P6 on the grid. They just had an awful strategy, and he finished outside the points. But that is Alpine. And yeah, those are my predictions for Mexico. Now we'll move on to Kalata, who will say his predictions. He actually had predictions for USA as well, and then he will share his predictions for Mexico.
Yeah, but my predictions are based on a very different. I mean, I have participated in a separate tournament of predictions with my friends from Sofia. My friends Shoshi and Radu, shout out my guys. But they, with them, we basically try to guess the race winner, and we pick a category. And I usually pick which teams are going to be on the podium. And I had predicted Norris on pole and Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull podium, which no, but this is how life works, unfortunately, on occasion. Also, my predictions for next time: Ferrari on podium. Probably not the 2 cars, but definitely one Ferrari on podium. And a bit of a funny one, because they were going to be like points. Oh yes, and I say no. I don't care about points. I care about funny. So my prediction for next time is that Bottas is going to outqualify Lance Stroll.
I love this one.
That would be really interesting if that happens, considering Sauber. I mean, but to be fair, Bottas just outqualified Lewis Hamilton, so anything is possible.
That is true.
But yes, this is all for today from us. We hope you liked this episode with Kalata. We hope he had a great time as well.
I had a lovely time. Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. It was really a pleasure for you to give me my Oli Berman moment, for me to take the place of a legend for just one recording. It was really fun talking to you about this, the pinnacle of motorsports. I hope that one day we'll be able to do it again, though maybe the 4 of us.
We shall see. But we're looking forward to the next episode. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook. And stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, and remember,
If you no longer go for a god that exists,
you're no longer a racing driver.